Okay, yesterday we're learning the dinim of it's called, as we discussed, nat bar nat, means nicing tam bar nicing tam, which means, again, because it's such important, then we'll repeat it again, and that is, if somebody cooked something pativ in a halachic pot that was clean and used that day for meat. Okay, so you had a meat pot, was used that day for meat, and then you cooked potatoes, lokshin, something parav, noodles, something parav in the pot. So because it was used that day, even though halachically, it says in most opinions, most of the sheinim say, you'd be allowed to eat those potatoes or noodles with cheese together. But because Rashi is machmer, Rashi holds that if it was used that day, so you shouldn't use mamish. Okay, let's make it simple. You cook macaroni in a meat pot that was used that day for meat. Okay, now I want to put in cheese into the macaroni. So most Rishonim say you're allowed to. Rashi says you shouldn't. Rashi is machmer, and the halacha says you should be machmer like Rashi. So therefore, lechatchila, but the macaroni is completely parav, meaning you can eat milk right before it, you can have milk right after it, you just can't have milk together with the macaroni. You know, you can't put cheese on the macaroni. We also discussed the practical din. What happens if you have an oven that you just finished cooking chicken in? So now the oven is used that day for meat, and now you want to bake a parva cake. For Shabbos, you want to bake a parva cake in the oven to be able to have with your coffee and milk Shabbos morning. So we learned that, again, the halacha is you shouldn't. You can't have it together mamish with milk. You can have it before the coffee. You can have it after the coffee. You can't have it together with the coffee because the halacha is you machmer like Rashi. L'chatchila, but the it wouldn't be an issue. But l'chatchila, you wouldn't be allowed to eat that cake together with milk.
Is that called dairy equipment?
The issue of dairy equipment, we discussed yesterday, that if ice cream, that's O-U-D-E, let's say, that means it's parav, but it was made in dairy equipment. So again, if somebody keeps Chol Yisrael, they can't eat it. But if somebody doesn't keep Chol Yisrael, that ice cream, you can't eat mamish together with meat. You can have it right after the meat, but you can't smear ice cream on the meat. Or parva creamer. If you have a parva creamer that says, okay, again, it will be the same thing. If you keep Chol Yisrael, you can't use it. But if you don't keep Chol Yisrael, you can't have it mamish with halachics together in the same bite with meat. You can have it before, you can have it after.
Just a cake thing. So if you make chicken, you made a cake after the chicken was finished, right? You're saying you could not have a milk coffee. I think you said right, Rashi.
No, the halacha is to be machmir that you cannot have it mamish together with milk.
But if the oven was
One more time. Now, one time. We're reviewing what we learned yesterday. Okay? Because it's very practical, important din. I mean, as many times as you learn it, you still need to review it. Okay. Now, what happens if it wasn't a ben yaimei? That means the oven wasn't used for 24 hours, or the baking pan was not used for 24 hours, or the pot was not used for 24 hours, and you cook in a meat pot, you cook something pativ. So even though it says l'chatchili, you shouldn't cook it with the intent of putting cheese on it. But after it's cooked, if you want to put cheese on it, you're allowed to put cheese on those noodles. You can have the cake together with coffee, with milk. You don't have to get a coffee. You can even have it together with milk, bite by bite, because it's Eina ben Yaimei. And then according to all opinions, you don't have to be machmer, and you're allowed to eat that parva food together with milk. The same thing would be in reverse. If it was made in a milchik pot, in a dairy pot, so again, you couldn't eat it together, mamish with meat.
Okay.
What?
So then, like mamish halacha, my thing that happens every week. So if mashal, my wife takes challah, yeah, bake, it's fine. But right before Shabbos, she'll put it in the oven, heat it up, fine. So if the oven
One sec. Let's discuss. No, it's a very practical case. women bake challah, okay? Now, many times, they bake it at the end of the day. They should be fresher, mama, whatever.
Yes.
So first you have your chicken in the oven, or your meat in the oven, yeah? And it's not covered. Let's say it's in the oven. So the oven is now a meat oven used that day. Now you want to bake challah in the oven. Correct?
Yep.
Now if you want to bake challah in the oven, you cannot, after Shabbos with your leftover challah, you can't make French toast with milk, or you can't smear cream cheese on the challah, because the challah, according to many Yishenim, yeah, but the halachic said in Shechon, you should be machmir like Rashi, that the bread, because the challah, because it was baked in a meat oven that was used that day. But by the way, this is all when the oven is clean. If the oven's dirty, all these dinim don't apply. Because the oven's dirty, it's dirty. So then everything is milk meat. But then you wouldn't be allowed to make French toast with the leftover challah that you have left over from Shabbos because it was made. Now, if the oven wasn't used for 24 hours, let's say you did all your cooking and baking on Thursday, and now Friday afternoon it's more than 24 hours and the oven's clean, and you bake challah, you're allowed to eat that challah together with cheese.
Would one covering of foil make that go away? Meaning, challah is, let's say, 100% hard. You need a challah, let's say, Thursday. Comes Friday, you have chicken in there, you just want to wrap it in foil, and that way, it's like to Shabbos, you don't have to think to yourself, there's this halachic style.
You want to wrap what? The challah?
No, wrap the foil, because let's say you have
Wrap the foil around what?
Yes.
the
Yes, the
challah with
challah.
foil.
The challah with foil.
Because this way, when you put it into a halachic oven, you
If
can
the challah is properly wrapped, it should be double wrapped.
Okay.
So then, if the oven is clean,
Even if it's wrapped, really? Once it's wrapped, it doesn't matter anymore, right?
if the oven's dirty, it doesn't apply.
By the way, I don't like that kind of challah. Wrapped, you know.
It's not an issue of.
Anyway, we'll have a tasting class later. Who likes challah for what? Right now we're learning the halacha. Let's keep it there. What?
Wrap it with foil and put it in a chocolate.
Tatmana. If the oven's on, it's tatmana. B'chal, you can't put it into the oven for a lot of reasons.
You said in a binyan, you shouldn't have in mind.
It's brought down in halacha. You shouldn't l'chatchila do it to bake it to have with dairy. But if it's done, you could. I mean, but in other words, if you did it, you're allowed to have it. L'chatchila says you shouldn't bake it in that oven to l'chatchila with the intent of putting dairy on.
I think that's spicy.
One time, spicy we didn't come. Spicy we're supposed to get to today.
Any Jewish stream that they say, I eat milk an hour after the issue.
He's coming from Amsterdam.
Anything like that.
He's born in Amsterdam.
Yeah, if somebody's sick, they could.
Really? That's all? Nothing.
There's a custom in Amsterdam of 3 hours, for a sick person 1 hour, but the accepted custom in Ashkenazic and Sephardic places is 6 hours. From meat to milk.
What's the 5 hours and 1 minute? I've heard some people do that.
Because they say it's already the 6th hour.
There's no marker for that? I know we don't do that, but
I've seen it, but the halacha is not like that.
The challah is double wrapped, and there's flake sheets in there. And still, why can't it be used for no things?
If the challah is double wrapped, and here you're going into technicalities, because what happens if somebody wants to bake challah at the same time they're baking the meat? Okay? So, if the meat is completely wrapped, I mean,
Meat or the challah?
one second. If the meat is completely covered properly with aluminum foil, it's sealed basically, and the challah is sealed, then you're allowed, the challah is still parv. If the meat is uncovered, even if the challah is double wrapped, b'diavad, you can consider the challah parv, but it's not a good idea, it says.
Why? Why is it double wrapped?
Because there's still the possibility that wasn't 100% wrapped. How many times you wrap things and then it opens up in the baking, it's
Aluminum foil, if you wrapped it twice around the challah.
it could open. But again, the it would be considered parv, but l'chatchila it's not a good
the
idea.
chicken's covered or uncovered? I missed that part.
Covered.
Okay. What happens many times, so every Shabbat, every Friday, every Rav, I'm sure in the city gets this question. They bake chicken in the oven, by mistake they put fish in the oven at the same time. Okay? Now, if you have bake fish and chicken or meat in the oven at the same time, and they are both uncovered, you can't eat either of them.
What?
You can't eat either of them
Slammering?
because the steam.
There's no Zaya.
Oh, yes, there is.
You look at the glass, I always see through. There's no Zaya there.
There's steam coming up from the pans. Are you kidding?
Zaya doesn't mean like the end.
Stay out of the kitchen. Stay out of the kitchen. There's always, so if they're both, and this happens a lot, by the way, and people always have this, they have a good sense of humor. They'll call it over half an hour before Shabbos, that we just realized that the meat and the chicken, the meat and the fish were cooking in the oven at the same time and they were both open. So they have to find something else to eat for Shabbos.
How about challah?
But 1 second, if they're both covered, then it's not a problem. If they're properly covered.
So there's a fill, it's fine.
Yeah, if they're properly covered.
Can you wait a day or two and eat it?
No!
No, it's not
Wait
going to
for
taste good.
cheeseburger.
It's not going to taste good.
Oh, seriously.
Let me digest the question.
No, don't
I
do
need to
fish and
digest the question.
Fish and the chicken, that they stay in the same oven.
What's the difference a day
separate
later?
them and maybe put it again in the oven. That is less after.
No.
24 hours.
No.
It's not nothing.
In fact, there are opinions in halacha that say that we know kosher and treif is nullified 1 in 60. Okay? There are opinions in halacha that say meat and fish, which halacha says is sakana, dangerous to eat. Whether doctors agree with it, that's totally irrelevant. Halacha says it's dangerous to eat meat and fish together. There are many shittas in halacha that hold because of the rule chamura sakanta mi isura. Danger is stricter than halacha from Isser, so they hold it's not even batul b'shishin. There are many days in halacha that if some meat and fish mix,
You're not eating them together. You eat them separate, and you're not going to eat them at all. You just eat the chicken a day later. And
doesn't matter. It has taste of fish in it, and this has taste of meat in it.
You
And
have the challah with the fish if the challah was baked with the meat, and then you have the bread or the challah with fish separate.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
if it's baked with meat, and the meat was uncovered, you cannot eat the challah with meat. With fish. I'm sorry, you cannot eat the challah with fish because it has a taste of meat in it. Not only that, if you bake challah in an oven at the same time with meat, and they're both uncovered, yeah? That challah is 6 hours. That means when you eat the challah, you have to wait 6 hours to eat dairy.
This opinion,
Mamish is gomer because it has a taste of the meat in it.
this opinion shared by Sephardim.
Sephardim are all the same. It's more than echad, zayit. Yeah.
The things mixed, you can feed it to your dog.
What?
The stuff you can't eat, the fish and the meat, you can feed it to your dog? No.
For your dog, yeah, you can benefit from it, you just can't eat it.
So it's not a sakana for the dog.
No, for a person. For a person. Anyway, now, what happens though? What? If one's covered very, very well, you could be made of b'shasat. I mean, you don't do it. If you do it, the both should be covered properly. But if you didn't, one was covered, then you could be made.
It's the same thing as fish, right? If you have the fish open with challah, then also you can have it with
Correct. You can have it with meat.
You can have it with
Great. Now, what happens if somebody cooked chicken in water? Okay, made chicken soup. Then you take out the chicken. Okay, this water is mamish fleshik. You can't say it has a knot by knot, the taste of the chicken or this and out and it. You cook meat or chicken in water, the water becomes 100% meat. To the extent that if you mix it with milk, it's going to be treif. If you put then let's say you cook chicken soup and then you decide to cook a potato in the chicken soup. I mean, forget the recipe in detail. I'm just talking about mitzias. So then that potato would have to wait 6 hours. It's mamish fleshik because you cook. That's why we said I get these calls a lot. you have to assume, halachically, unless if the place is reliable, and he'll tell you this, unless the place is mamish reliable with a proper hechsher that you know what's going on, anything in a dairy restaurant has to be treated dairy. Anything in a meat restaurant has to be treated meat. For instance, if you buy French fries from a meat restaurant,
100%
huh?
100%
100% meat. Yeah, because most of the time, unless if they tell you and you trust them, no, there's a separate fryer and it's never, meat is never made, fried in the fryer. Yeah, everything's separate.
Separate fryer and they don't have a separate other.
Yeah, so then again, you understand? Because in a meat restaurant, they have halachic oil. Yeah? And it's a halachic oil. They'll fry French fries in it and they'll fry this in it and that. So it's all halachic. In anything in a pizza store, you have to assume halachically is milchik. You can't buy milk, unless again you find out mamish, but you can't come and buy French fries from a pizza store or milchik restaurant and eat it with your hot dogs. Because it's mamish meat. Okay, stay.